Pobelter on the backside of the fight. Doublelift goes down immediately, even with wild growth, and now they're trying to recuperate. Bjergsen coming in as Fence, Garen, and Hanser die at the same time. Bjergsen's now on the ground, and Immortals come out huge from the top lane fight. Immortals in 2 games takes down TSM.
Hello and welcome back for a little NALCS Tonight goodness. I'm James Dash Patterson, right along with Irene and Azale. We're going to recap for you the happenings of week 1 here in North America, as it was an eventful week at that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the standings, see how it all shook out. We've got 4 teams sitting at 2-0, and definitely not the 4 teams that most would expect.
No, not at all. And I mean, CLG and Immortals, a lot of people thought maybe one of those teams would have come out with a good start because of the roster changes, but both teams smashing really hard opponents, not what you expected.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Counter Logic Gaming, you go, okay, they have Dardoch now, maybe they have that aggression, but then trading that for Xmithie, a lot of people were saying, you know, Xmithie, maybe that's not going to work out for him, but it seems like the synergy he had with Pobelter won up that team, and it looks real good.
Right, I think popular opinion was that CLG got the better of the trade, you know, in the microcosm of player for player. But guess what? Xmithie is still doing tons of work over there on Immortals, getting the carries fed.
And I think it really goes to show, once again, League of Legends is a team game. It's not about only individual skill. It's about leadership qualities. It's about synergy. It's about, you know, filling the role that the team needs. And this is what Xmithie is proving. You know, maybe he's not the mechanical player that Dardoch is, but he doesn't have to be. And he's making it look much better than when Dardoch was with Immortals.
Yeah, and it's crazy, too, because you go back to spring, Xmithie had the most deaths out of any jungler, and he's second most in the entire damn league, and now he's turning it around, which is crazy, showing that his sacrifices are actually not, I guess the way to put it, right?
There you go.
That he's actually having now, like, Flame and Pobelter are getting so much off of what he does, and that's really good to see for Immortals.
You talk about it being a team game. Let's talk about some of the teams and games as we saw them this week.
Ooh,
The
I
first
like that.
one,
I like that.
I do what I can, I do what I can. The first one, Immortals versus TSM. This is one of those kind of big upsets, I'll call it, only because this is our first place team from Spring Split with the upgraded roster back in Doublelifts in the lineup.
Yeah, this was a really kind of awkward game from TSM for sure. The 2 games back-to-back of Galio mid with the Courage of the Colossus put Bjergsen on kind of a champion that wants to play to the side lanes, and they put Hanser on things like Fiora, etc., where it looked like they were trying to play away from mid lane as TSM, and that's almost never been a great strong suit for them.
I will say, though, I mean, when you look back to Summer Split, one of the strengths of this team was that they could play every style, right? You're supposed to be able to have carry top laner. You're supposed to be able to play to your AD carry. It doesn't just have to be about Bjergsen. So I think that the composition makes sense. You draft Galio, has super strong wave clear. It has assistance to a side lane split pusher like Fiora. So the composition makes sense. They just didn't end up playing it as well as they would have needed to take down Immortals. And I'm willing to say it is a really big upset because most people's early season power rankings had Immortals as like a 7th, 8th place team, like not even in playoffs.
And we talk about Xmithie, okay, well, he's the new member of Immortals, but now we talk about the effect overall and the development of the team, and I got to look at the top lane and say, hey, coming into the split in spring, we were talking about Flame, someday these aggressive top laners who should gain advantages and be able to carry teams, but we never really saw them able to sync with their teams fully, right? Always maybe some communication mistakes and whatnot. But here, multiple times evidenced in beautiful 5-man dives or syncing up teleports with the team and actually executing in a way that suggests the communication's on point.
Yeah, and Xmithie is definitely a facilitator of communication now as they've been moving forward, which is something that Dardoch really isn't. Dardoch kind of clutters comms with random things like, oh, you know, I might get caught backing here, etc., and it's not relevant to the game. And I've heard that feedback a lot from players who have actually played with him, saying that, you know, he can have those passive things in comms or passive-aggressive things, whereas Xmithie just keeps things rolling. So freeing up Flame, talking about what they're going to do next, etc., is really what's showing on Immortals.
I think that just the development of the team as a whole has really been a treat to watch as well. I mean, you look at the bot lane here, too, from the beginning of spring when they were kind of considered a joke to now they are a very strong bot lane, and they can compete, they can carry. And, you know, Cody-san in particular, this guy is very new to the scene and doing extremely well.
He just had his rookie split last split. And then let's not forget that Ole here is just an absolute monster on more proactive and carry-like supports. I got to push us forward to our next series, TSM versus C9, rematch of those spring finals. TSM comes out on top 2-0. And again, what we thought might be a slightly more competitive series ends up not being.
By the way.
Yeah, that was so good. But yeah, when everybody told me about this game, because I really didn't get to like watch it completely at the time, everybody's like, oh, this is going to be like it ended up being a smash, right? When I went back and watched it, there were a lot of moments where it was back and forth. It was actually not as crazy as people thought it was in terms of like one team winning over the other.
Yeah, I actually think that they were quite evenly matched. Most of the time, it just came down to like one moment in the game. I mean, you look at like game 2, the Baron. Yeah, like this Baron went so bad for C9, but before that, they had been playing very evenly. They were playing pretty strongly, and I think, you know, the sky is not falling for Cloud9 just yet. People are freaking out. They're 0-2. I would not worry just yet if you were a Cloud9 fan. I think this is still a very strong team, and I think that they're going to bounce back.
Things to consider is that, you know, this is the first week, number one. Number two, you're looking at an entirely new meta, so you're watching a team try and adapt to that, and they're it's clear that they're actively attacking that meta, right? Smoothie on Rakan both games, and he had some fantastic plays even within the losses. So, again, if those things get fleshed out, cleaned up, then they definitely could look better. We also have to consider the strength of schedule coming into this week, and that's a big one.
Yeah, 3, no impact. So we'll see what they look like when they have him back as well.
There you go. So the sky is not yet falling for Cloud9. Hold on to your worry warts for just a little bit longer. The last game of the day that we got to talk about, C9 versus CLG. Now, again, CLG with the roster move Dardoch in. This was a 2-1 victory for CLG over C9 back on Friday night.
And I mean, the most impressive thing about this series for me was how good Aphromoo looked. I think the bot lane was super impressive, but Aphromoo last split was not his usual self. Sure, he had some moments of brilliance, you know, but this was Aphromoo at his very best on playmakers, making plays, crushing the game. And when you have a guy who is known as one of the best in-game leaders in the league, who's shot calling and playing this well, the sky's the limit for this team. Like, they could go really far.
Well, and then let's talk about how that affects Dardoch, because as you mentioned, whereas Xmithie kind of can help with the team communication, and Dardoch might not necessarily be up to par in that regard. Well, if you got a leader like Aphromoo, a lot less of those responsibilities even fall to Dardoch to begin with.
Exactly. I've actually talked to Dardoch about this. Aphromoo keeps him in check. You know, one of them takes care of the early game. Aphromoo has that late game shot calling. But if Dardoch ever has those moments where he does have those things that are flooding comms, Aphromoo hits it right there, calls him out in comms and says, hey, you're saying some random stuff. And then he just goes quiet, and then he'll continue from there. So it just kind of hits the reset button, and that's so good for a player like Dardoch who can get in his own head.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Dardoch over the next 9 weeks. Let's really see if he rises to stardom.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, one of the most exciting things for CLG fans to really get amped about is the fact that Dardoch has not had his carry performance.
Yeah.
Dardoch is going to carry some games. Like, this guy will have his games where he goes off. He has every season that he has been in, whether the team is doing well or the team is doing poorly. And you can certainly expect some of those carry performances, but he hasn't had to turn them in yet for CLG to have victories.
Well, his carry performances will come. Let's talk about some of the carry performances that we had this week. Our OP5 for the NALCS, starting in the top lane, Dignitas someday.
Absolutely. This guy was a monster in the top lane. It was really kind of between him and a few other top laners, like maybe Darshan, but then all of a sudden today, just completely wrecks on Lucian and Fiora back-to-back. It was Kobe said it, someday fun day for him.
Yeah, I mean, the funny, like, this also could have gone to Darshan in the top lane, who I think played pretty well here too. And then you would have had essentially the full old school CLG lineup, which they actually won a championship with before, which we maybe should have just swapped just because it's hilarious.
Just for the sake of it.
But you gotta love that. I mean, these guys have been around for a long time. They're having success, and I think it's so nice to see guys like Pobelter and Xmithie, who have not been getting a lot of credit, really succeeding, because Pobelter is someone that, you know, way back when he was on EG and even like Winter Fox and all these teams, people were waiting for him to blow up. That's like the guy with the most potential, and now finally maybe he is getting to shine a little bit more.
Absolutely. We moved to that jungle. Of course, you saw it on the graphic, but Xmithie picking it up for Immortals right alongside Pobelter in the mid lane. Maybe we talk about them together because so much of their success came from the two of them working together.
There were some really great plays from Xmithie. The jungle may not completely fit the meta for him, but I think when he has Gragas, easy to pull it off, and he's able to make those plays. So I love that he's stepped up as a leader, but he still has those in-game score lines that really do back a good performance from him that transitions to Pobelter too.
I also think you can be a little bit excited if you're an Immortals fan, because Kindred is coming back into meta perhaps, and he was always very good on Kindred. That was kind of one of his carry picks that he was really strong on. Sejuani, all jokes aside, he was a pretty solid Sejuani player. That is a pick. Gragas, Olaf, like all these are solid for him, and just the fact that he seemed to mesh so quickly with the team, is very promising.
And you know, Pobelter is a person or a player that throughout his career has been the subject of lots of praise and lots of criticism at very different times
polarizing.
based on performance, right?
Yeah.
And I will say that on the outside of the season, once again, he was tasked with something very difficult. He had strong opponents in his game, and yet he comes out and he performs against Jensen right along Xmithie and put together a lot of carry games on, you know, picks like the Ahri or the Syndra.
Yeah, I think that Pobelter, for sure, ever since the start of his career, like you were saying, has kind of been like, people say he's good, and then other people will be like, what are you talking about? And it's really kind of, you either consider Pobelter to be somebody who has the potential to be a top mid, or that he's kind of just been carried a whole bunch. And I think that this split so far, he's showing that he has that intact synergy with Xmithie, he can play around the team, and that he stepped up, and he does have the ability, and he does have the skill.
Our final two in the OP5 are his former teammates, Stixxay, Aphromoo. Again, these guys were touted as one of the best bot lanes in the league. Spring split didn't necessarily deliver. As we said, we were looking for more out of Aphromoo. Well, here they start out on fire.
Yeah, they really did. And I mean, I think that when Aphromoo is playing really well, he's going to enable Stixxay that much more, because Stixxay, I think, is one of the best mechanical AD carries in the league, period. Like, he's such a strong player when you look at him at his best. And I think that having Aphromoo to enable them in lane, you know, if they're doing well in lane, they can certainly carry games late, because even in spring split, when they were often doing poorly in lane, dying and stuff, you would still see those carry performances turned in by Stixxay. So if they can succeed early, I think they're going to succeed late.
Yeah, and moving on to Aphromoo from that, I actually got to talk to him about playmaking supports, and he was telling me that because Doran's shield on 80 carries is so prevalent, you don't have to play Karma, you don't have to play Zyra, they won't kill you in lane because you'll just sustain up with these potions and the regen of the shield. Play a playmaking support, and now he's enabled to do that. We saw him play the Bard, we saw him play a fantastic Rakan.
I was about to ask, was his the best Rakan of the weekend?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah. Easy.
Wait, the bar has been set. Aphramoo's Rakan. I mean, wouldn't expect it to be any other player. We'll see if anyone else throughout the sports in the league can match him. Final subject we got to attack here is our Twitter question of the day. We were asking you guys at home, who do you think is was the best offseason roster change? First up, we have Marcel Hansen, who said, can there be something better than Doublelift's return to Team Solo Mid?
Well, the answer, yes.
Yeah.
So far, I mean, you know, it depends where you're sitting. But I mean, for Immortals and CLG, things are looking pretty good. That said, Doublelift, he was the undisputed AD carry king when he was, you know, back with TSM previously, and I think that they will likely get back to that pool.
Yeah, you need a little bit more of that professional play practice after, you know, having to get the rust off of solo queue and be back in the competitive environment. But also, I gotta say, all the other teams are actually playing better as well overall. I'm noticing slightly better macro play from pretty much everybody across the board, and everybody just seems warmed up from spring.
It's kind of a tough thing to call, because you would say, you know, with familiarity in mind, knowing that this roster did win Summer Split last year, you want to say that if that's their ceiling again, this is a really solid roster change. But the upside and kind of the unknown potential of the other moves is what makes them so exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd even say with TSM, like, that's their baseline. That's the level of expectation that
they need to get back to.
People are always going to look at TSM, and anything but a championship in North America is a disappointment for them, especially now that Doublelift is back. And I mean, people have such big expectations for this team, but no one has ever won spring then summer, and no one has ever won 3 straight championships. So TSM will be looking to change both of those.
Absolutely. Flash33C says, it has to be Immortals. Now that they have Xmithie instead of Dardoch, they are more inclined to make plays and work together compared to spring.
Yeah, this was kind of the surprising one for me that ended up with a very positive result, because personally, I've never been an enormous Xmithie fan, but I think that he's been playing incredibly well, and he's actually kind of making a believer out of me. It's like when Moon got picked up by FlyQuest, you're like, okay, I know that this guy, I know his level, I've seen him play before many times, and now you're seeing a way better performance than what you had seen previously. So definitely having really just an upgrade for them, and in terms of the overall team play around their jungler, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, he fits in so well, but I would say everyone was a fan of him in North America when he was stealing Elder Dragon at MSI and getting them to the finals. So he's had some good performances and certainly has earned his due. All
right, lastly, we have Anders, who says, getting Dardoch on the team makes CLG far better overall, and they now have a real chance to take back the throne at the North American LCS.
I mean, I agree. They do have a real shot of it, but wouldn't it be something if it's a Xmithie who ends up blocking them in the finals, you trade for Dardoch? That would be, I think, amazing story-wise.
That would be that, like, sweet revenge where you're just like, hey, guess what? I ended up on the better team. Sucks to be you. But I'm excited about this one because I really like Dardoch as a player. I think he's just mechanically so good in the jungle, and watching him is always entertaining. This week, it actually wasn't that crazy from him, so I can't really say it was a great move yet, but I do think that they have that championship potential again with that jungler.
Exactly. I mean, I really like this idea, or the point that the wins this week didn't come from Dardoch, and that there's really is still all this untapped power. We haven't seen how it'll manifest when he does have a carry performance. Again, will they be able to keep that kind of unbridled aggression in check when he really gets going? And we've known him to kind of throw some leads back. Time will tell. That is, of course, going to do it for this evening. We have to bid you all adieu. And so meet us back here next week for some more North American LCS action. Good night.